Hello, hello.
Good to go?
Oh,
Lucy, put them down. Gonna try mine, see if they work for my eyes. Does.
Welcome, everyone. This is Mayor Bob. It's great to see all of you in the audience, staff and guests and citizens. We are testing out some new technology tonight for sound. You will notice that Council Member Julie Thrower is wearing a, what's it called, lapel mic? And we've heard that it works a little bit better. And the rest of us will be trying to make sure that we talk loud enough in our microphones so that all of you in the back of the room can hear. I'm going to officially open the session and ask Bessie Jo Wagner, City Clerk, to do roll call of council members.
Mayor Giles,
Here.
Councilmember Machezek,
Here.
Councilmember Nelson,
Here.
Councilmember Nielsen,
I am.
Councilmember Thrower.
Here.
Thank you, Council. Would everyone please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Council, I'm going to call for a motion to approve the agenda.
You approve the agenda.
Second.
Thank you. A motion has been made and seconded to approve the agenda. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Hearing no opposition, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Council, are there any items that you would like to have removed and discussed at a later date?
Yes. Item 7.
Item 7. Okay. And that is the lease for the Tesla Supercharger, correct?
Correct.
Would you like to have that discussed at the end of tonight's meeting as a separate item,
If
or?
everybody would desire, or that would,
Okay.
that would be up to.
I'd be in favor of that.
So we'll add that as at the end of the meeting tonight, and it sounds like everyone's in favor of that. So Mike made a motion. Lyle, did you second that?
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Mayor, we need a roll call vote on that because there's things to be signed.
Correct.
So I'd make a motion to approve the consent agenda, removing item 7, AB 25-083.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Machezek,
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson,
Yes.
Mayor Giles,
Yes.
Councilmember Nielsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Thrower.
Yes.
Okay. Bessie Jo, did that motion clear the rest of the items from the consent agenda?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Okay. We're going to move into general public comment. We received, I believe, 5 total comments today under general comment, and those were all distributed to everyone. And in addition, we have 2 people that would like to talk to us tonight, and we will use our normal procedures. We'll call on you, and Tom Tidwell, I see you in the audience. You're up first. So we generally just restrict our comments to 3 minutes, and please state your name and address for the record.
Tom Tidwell, 1165 Majestic View Drive here in McCall. And I'm here tonight to share our comments from the Big Payette Lake Water Quality Council concerning the proposed concession permit there at Legacy Beach. The Big Payette Lake Water Quality Council would like to express strong concerns about water quality on Payette Lake. Presently, there is a lack of trend data related to phosphorus in the near shore for the city and county leaders who make decisions regarding use of this lake. However, the University of Idaho's study presented by limnologist Dr. Frank Wilhelm identified phosphorus levels above what is acceptable on Payette Lake. This exceedance can be verified as a trigger point according to the Valley County Waterways Management Plan that was adopted in 2022. The Water Quality Council, in conjunction with IDEQ, is hoping to establish nearshore testing this summer on Payette Lake to continue the study of phosphorus in the nearshore water column. The data collection slated for the 3-year period at this point will prove helpful for all decision makers. The City Council, in their February 28th meeting, decided that a year of rest for Legacy Beach concession was agreeable. Our council is committed to cooperative action with the city and the county, especially since Payette Lake is the sole source of drinking water for the city, and the lake is an economic asset. A robust economy without a viable ecology to support it is not sustainable. We can agree that water quality is in everyone's best interest. Phosphorus, which is classified as a nutrient pollution, could be contributing to the proliferation of aquatic vegetation in the lake, like the milfoil and pondweed. We urge the city to move cautiously. We would like the City Council to stick with the year of rest for the concession, as our previous letter to you indicated. On behalf of the Big Payette Lake Water Quality Council, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Tom. Appreciate it. All right, next up is David Gallipoli. Welcome, David.
Thank you. I agree with everything Tom just said, and I'll add a few more things. I would ask this council to delay a decision for the Mountain Meadows Adventure proposal until this item is open for a public hearing. Payette Lake is everyone's drinking water. Valley County waterways are 47% impaired. This council's recent approval to expand Mile High Marina will add more permanent power boats, especially destructive wake boats, to the lake. There is overwhelming evidence from science and water studies on how destructive power boats, especially wake boats, are to inland lakes. And many states in our nation have taken steps to limit or ban wake boats. Many states ban all power boats on reservoirs. Valley County Waterways Management Plan recommends at least moving wake boat zones out 250 feet from shore, but the county has failed to act. Many new studies recommend moving the wake boat zones out 500 to 1,000 feet. Payette Lake is experiencing, as Tom just said, lakeshore erosion, milfoil, and water quality issues. Phosphorus health contributes to the impaired waters of the North Fork of the Payette River and Cascade Reservoir. The city's goal is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and I don't understand how adding more power boats to the lake helps achieve that goal. With the number of powerboat retailers in the area, the approval of more subdivisions, and recreation pressure, we need more testing and boat count data to know if adding more powerboats is responsible. This council talks about protecting our waterways, but is failing to take action to protect Payette Lake and our waterways. The public needs to know what safety risks this proposal would add for non-powerboat boat recreators. I ask this council to table the proposal from Mountain Meadows until this council holds a public discussion on ways to protect the lake. My second issue is I'm disappointed that you're abandoning your commitment to creating McCall Area Housing Authority to help solve our housing crisis. I don't believe this should have been done behind closed doors without any public comment, especially after you committed to help solve the problem and spent taxpayer dollars. The Southwestern Idaho Cooperative Housing Authority will not help us solve our affordable workforce housing crisis because that's not what their mission is, which they make clear on their website. So please explain to the public how Southwestern will help McCall. Is this council no longer interested in helping many in our community who struggle with rent insecurity, live in substandard housing and trailers, and sleep on couches? I am disappointed with your lack of transparency in this process and your decision to exclude the public from commenting on your decision to terminate the McCall Area Housing Authority. I ask this council to hold a public meeting to discuss this termination and the council's plans to solve the housing crisis in McCall. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Absolutely. That's my next step. We've got an approved process, Rick, where if people didn't sign up. So you may address us, and anyone else in the audience raising your hand. That's great.
Rick Faraday, 315 Burns, McCall. I've got to agree with both of the former speakers, especially Tom, and a good portion of what David said. I think these two on the end of the table here are the only ones that were here when this concession was originally granted. And there were many of us who spoke against that at the time and wanted a public hearing, which did not happen. So I gotta ask you to put this off and go ask the public what they want to do with their public park, with their public waterways, with their boat ramp. I think you're missing the boat there. So please do that. I stood up here back then, 20 years ago, I believe, approximately, and said that, yeah, they're only going to put three jet skis down there. And we saw what happened with that. And I told the current council then, you're going to have a problem down the road with this because it's going to be hard to get out of this concession. And that's where we are today. And you have the chance to stop this concession right now. You're not hurting anybody. I think it's in the city's benefit to do that. The money that you make from that is not very, very much compared to the use of that lakefront property. So I'd urge you strongly to rethink that and have a public hearing, just like David said. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Ed, you're next.
I'm following Rick and David and Tom. Thank you, guys. I'm on their page.
Please state your name and address for the.
Ed Elliott, 1840 Warren Wagon Road. There's a lot of scientific data now that's being collected that indicates that the lake is in trouble. And if I've been hearing the council members correctly, you seem to agree that the lake is in trouble. My perspective, I think, is quite unique because I've lived on the lake as a year-round resident for over 50 years. And I've seen the changes that have occurred daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. And the last 5 years, the difference has been really profound and really troubling. But I believe, if I'm hearing you correctly, that you all believe the lake is in trouble as well. And what logic is it that would approve a concession that would only add to those things that are causing trouble on the lake? It just defies logic that you would go ahead and approve an activity that is causing the trouble that we're all concerned with. Please deny this request for this commercial proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak under general comments? Okay. We will move on to reports. Bessie Jo, do you know if Sheila Francis is in the audience tonight?
She is not, and she is not online. So I'm not sure why she was unable to make it, but she did submit a report.
Okay. Everyone has that in the packet. That's the Chamber of Commerce report. Any questions that you would like Bessie Jo to forward to the chamber?
None for me.
All right. Let's move on to department reports, which are also in the packet. Any questions you have on any department report?
A question, but I just wanted to say thank you for Forrest and Bob, Mayor Bob. I imagine you were involved in this and anybody else at the city in terms of advocating for the city's ability to regulate short-term rentals. The short-term rental bill was rejected, at least for now, is what my understanding. And so, I know we worked through the Resort Coalition as well. So just thank you for your efforts on that.
You're welcome. Okay. Council, anything you would like to report on any committees or activities that you're involved in that you'd like the rest of us to know about?
None for me, thanks.
All right. Next, we're going to move into public hearings. I believe we have 3 in a row, and I'll take them one at a time. There will be opportunity for public comment on each of the 3 hearings. And let me just do a question for David Petty in the back row. Is my microphone working okay? Are you able to hear us?
Talking even quieter.
On the other side of your.
Okay. Thank you, Rick.
Thanks for that help.
Yeah, I need a collared shirt. How about, maybe I'm talking quieter because I'm thinking it's still, no.
Okay, our first public hearing.
Test. Okay, I'll do that. Sorry, Mayor Bob.
It's working, good. First public hearing is on Resolution 25-08, which is our comprehensive fee schedule. And Bessie Jo Wagner is going to help us and talk to us about a couple of items that needed to be updated.
Mayor, Council, Bessie Jo Wagner, City Clerk. Yes, what you have before you is the updated resolution that includes the short-term rental permit fee and the commercial snow removal permit fee and renewal fee. These fees were due to a Scrivener error left off of the last comprehensive fee schedule in November. So this will help reflect what we're actually doing.
Great. First step is to open the public hearing. So let me call for a motion to do that.
Move we open the public hearing.
Second. Thank you both. Motion has been made and seconded to open the public hearing. All in favor, please say aye. 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 I think we're good on that. So the public hearing is officially open. And Bessie Jo, please proceed to present on the specifics.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. As stated, we're just reinstating those fees onto this, the comprehensive fee schedule, the short-term rental permits and the commercial snow removal permits. They were originally adopted in 2024.
And all that information's in our packet, and it's resolution 25-08 that we'll be talking about?
Yes, sir.
Council, any questions for staff?
Just looks like the short-term rental permit is missing a 0 on it somewhere, at least one.
So it's $250, is that correct?
It's $225.
225, and then the snow.
The snow removal permit is $125, and the snow removal annual renewal is $75.
Thanks, Bessie Joe. All right. Then I'm going to call for, let's see. Doesn't sound like we have any questions for city staff. Public comment. And I don't believe anyone signed up for this item under public comment, but maybe I'm wrong. Perhaps you would like to speak. Everyone certainly has an opportunity. If you just raise your hand, then I would call on you and provide you 3 minutes. Okay. All right. Seems like our discussion has been concluded. Council, are you ready to close this public hearing and deliberate?
Move and close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay. All in favor of this motion to close the public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that motion carries. So we can deliberate, and then I'll call for some specific motions. There's a couple of choices in our packet. Lyle, do you have any last minute questions, or are you feeling good about this motion?
I'm good, thanks.
Okay. Julie,
Yeah, I'm good.
Mike,
Mhm.
Colby?
Good enough, I guess.
Okay. All right, and I'm fine with that. So the recommended motion in our packet is listed in our packet, the wording. And
Make a motion to approve resolution 25-08, adopting the city's comprehensive fee schedule, reflecting updated fees for short-term rental unit permit, commercial snow removal permit, annual renewal of commercial snow removal permit, and authorizing the mayor to sign all necessary documents.
thank you, Mike. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Julie. Motion has been made and seconded. May I have a roll call vote on this motion?
Councilmember Machesik,
Yes.
Councilmember Thrower,
Yes.
Mayor Giles,
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson,
Yes.
Councilmember Nielsen,
No.
Okay. That motion carries. Thank you, council. And we will move on to the next public hearing. Okay. Meredith Todd, you're going to help us through this next one. Let me start out with stating the purpose of this public hearing is to hear testimony related to a vacation known as a VAC 24-02, a vacation of a platted sewer utility easement at 1425 and 1435 Aspen Ridge Lane to facilitate a lot combination process for Scott Simmons. May I have a motion for us to open the public hearing on this topic?
I move we open the public hearing.
Thank you, Colby. Is there a second?
Second.
Julie, thank you. Motion has been made and seconded. All in favor of opening this public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Council, are there any conflict of interest, ex parte contact, or declarations that you would like to share regarding this application? Okay, and my answer is no on that. So Meredith, please proceed.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Meredith Todd, City Planner and Sustainability Planner for the City of McCall. As the mayor stated in the lead up to this item, this is a request to consider the recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission regarding a request to vacate an existing sewer utility easement and then relocate it on the same resulting property there on Aspen Ridge Lane. The record of survey associated with this property has been conditionally approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission contingent on execution of this vacation process. And then any design review or process for constructing an eventual home across the no longer existent lot line would be managed through the HOA, as that is an approved design review committee within the City of McCall. So this is a process that does seem to be occurring a little bit more frequently, the combination of lots to facilitate a bit larger scale development. There's currently no provision within code that prohibits that. So it is the consolidation of two buildable lots into one, and the sewer district has noted that it'll eliminate a sewer hookup in that process, so there won't be an ADU available on the site. Other than that, there have been only one public comment relating to the lot combination and vacation, and that was to make sure that there are no adverse impacts to the sewer. And the sewer has not provided any indication that it's impossible to relocate. They've provided plans and engineering services of their own to make sure it can be relocated, I believe, to the northern boundary of the resulting lot. So that comment from the public seems to be addressed. And then the last note that I'll leave you with, we have pretty limited directions from the code on what the criteria are for vacation. So your deliberations should just address the bolded section in page 4 of my staff report that talks about what your techniques for approval, denial, or modification of the application are. And this is not considered a right-of-way. It is, again, just an easement that is included on the original plat for the subdivision. And then finally, the applicant representative, Brent Belville, apologizes for his inability to be here tonight. He was hoping to be here during our spring break, but he has a quite long pre-existing conflict trying to catch some fish in Hell's Canyon tonight that he did not want to give up his spot on. So told him I can pinch hit, but if there are additional questions and you need to continue, we can facilitate that effort. So you've opened the public hearing. You'll be able to collect public testimony on this application after my discussion here, or if I can answer any questions. But other than that, I don't really have any engineering concerns or code concerns to offer, and I stand for any questions.
Council, any questions for Meredith at this point?
So to confirm, these are two suitable building lots.
All right. And we received, Bessie Jo, no written comments on this proposal.
No additional comments, correct?
Yeah. But let's see, and there's no one that has signed up for this item. But let me ask once again, we'll open up, we've already opened the public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to address us on this vacation of the lot and forming two lots? Okay. We'll move on to, there's nothing to rebut. There are no public comments that were heard during the public hearing. And Meredith, I think everyone's good with this proposal on council, otherwise they would ask more questions. So I'm going to ask council, are you ready to close this particular public hearing?
Move we close the public hearing.
Thanks, Julie.
I've got a question for Bill.
Sure.
Before we go into deliberation, this is kind of a part deliberation, part question.
And we usually
we have two buildable lots that this is getting ridiculous here, combining two buildable lots to build one bigger house that's going to sit empty all year. Is there anything legally that we can do to object to this, or how would that process go if we were to shoot this down?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Nielsen, I think Meredith explained that there aren't specific criteria that have to be determined in making this decision. So it is somewhat discretionary. On the other hand, you don't have anything in your code that says that property owners are precluded from combining lots and reducing the density on their property. So you don't have a code prohibition. I'd say if you decide that you don't want to have the vacation of this sewer easement, you need to state for the record what that reason is. And go from there. Again, the owner is not denied the use of the property. They just can't build the large home that they otherwise have without vacating that sewer easement and combining the lots. Am I missing that, Meredith? Is that your understanding?
That's my understanding. I think if it's a question of wanting to look at the code and our options moving forward, since this is occurring increasingly frequently, that's something to bring up as well, but probably not within this application review.
Just to remind the council that if this is becoming an issue and then we can discuss at a future meeting when it's appropriate, whether or not it would be appropriate to have a moratorium on any lot combinations for a period of time to allow you to properly vet a code change.
Meredith?
Yes.
Is the request for this also, is there any indication of the application to build what they're going to build on this with?
Yeah, they already have a design put together, Councilmember Nelson. I've seen the floor plan, but not the vertical elevations. Typically within Aspen Ridge, we do not see those in the planning department due to their design review committee being approved. But it sits squarely across the eventually dissolved lot line, and it's large but similar in scale to most of the Aspen Ridge neighborhood. I think they just want big yards.
Have they been notified that should they do this, that if they come back to us in a year and decide they want to split them back and sell them, that where the answer is no?
Yes.
Clearly?
Yes.
That one just keeps coming back around, so.
Yep.
And are these combinations of combining lots done primarily for short-term rentals? Or is it more of the, I want my house this size and I want to locate it in this place, in this lot, more of a location issue then? Or is it, I need 8 bedrooms and 4 baths, short-term rental?
I think typically in the order of operations, it's not been a question. Do you plan to short-term rent it at the application stage? We typically see it 2 or 3 years later when we're learning how to pay for the house or learning how to occupy it more often. But that's certainly a question we can try and ask more often. I don't know that it would be able to do much within the code if we did.
Yeah, I don't
Just be trivia.
know.
Those are all good questions. Thanks for speaking up so we understand that. Bill, thanks for your guidance.
Sure. Mr. Mayor, just so that you know, the floor plans that are shown in the packet indicate that the main level would have 2,905 square feet. The basement would have 1,938 square feet. So the combined total living space would be just under 5,000 square feet.
modest cottage in the woods.
You said the applicant or the owner is not in the room tonight?
That's correct.
All right. Council, do you want to close this public hearing and deliberate?
Sure.
Yep.
Okay.
My motion's still out there.
Second.
Say, Julie?
Oh, I said my motion's still out there, so.
Right. Thank you for reminding me. Yeah, and I don't want to rush us along. It was a really good discussion. Thanks, everyone. Motion has been made and seconded to close the public hearing on the vacation. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right, let's deliberate, and then I've got to ask some questions of staff. So there are two options that we have before us tonight. One is approval and the other is denial of VAC 24-02. And once that motion is made, whichever direction is voted on, then we would ask staff to pull together findings of fact, conclusions of law, the decision document, as we call it. And then, Meredith, we would need to ask you for a date certain, because we would need to make a motion to continue the decision-making process on that vacation. So be thinking about that. Lyle, what's your thoughts about approval or denial?
A bit of a quagmire, so I'm looking forward to the discussion to get more insight. Part of me thinks that we have ordinances that are set up for reasons, people follow them, and they should have a predictable outcome from the ordinances. The ordinances don't always get us what we want, and then come back to us to say this is a trend we're seeing. We need to change our ordinances and be able to give builders, homeowners the clear expectation of what it is. So let's think that I want to hear everybody the discussion. What suits.
Julie, I'm going to call on you next.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with Lyle. I appreciate Colby's comments and concerns. And I think, if this is really an issue that has been coming up in terms of combining lots for not only larger houses, but houses that end up being vacation rentals. I mean, if there's, someone can always say they're going to live in it and then put it up for a vacation rental, a couple months after anyway. So we don't really have ability to control that. But I think I would like to see that conversation later outside of the context of this application. I think, we do have the ordinance we have, in all fairness to the applicant, that is what everybody has been talking about in terms of, issues with lot line, with combination of lots is, not addressed in our code. I mean, it's not something that we, are directed to consider in our code. Although I appreciate Bob, you're not Bob, you're Bill, sorry, Bill's comment that we do have some discretion there. But yeah, I think I would like to see that conversation at a later date. So yeah, as far as this application, I'm not thinking that would be something that I would be looking to rationalize denial of this application.
Thank you, Julie. Mike? Okay, Colby?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I have anything else nice to add, so I probably won't.
Well, I feel the way the three of you on this side of the room spoke. I can relate to those items, but I do feel we should put at a future meeting a discussion of a possible moratorium and see whether we're getting these trends. Is it really a trend? And in some ways, every bit of infill is important to us for housing. So I think we should follow up at a future date on that. Okay. In our packet is the language to continue the discussion, the decision-making process, but tonight is an action item and we need a date of a meeting moving forward, whether we vote to deny or accept this. So what's the date that conclusions would be ready?
I'd be comfortable with, I think, April 24th. Is that 2 weeks out?
That's too quick.
Too quick, probably. Oh, you're right. What's the next one after that, Bessie Jo?
May 8th.
May 8th.
So council, in your packet, you could write down in the blank area, May 8th, and then I will call for a motion.
And with a motion to continue VAC 24-02 to the May 8th meeting and direct staff to prepare findings of fact, conclusions of law, and decision consistent with the approval and council's deliberation or denial and council's deliberation regarding the subject application.
Thank you, Mike. Is there a second?
Second.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may, we need to be clear whether you want the findings to approve or deny the applications.
To approve.
Okay, thank you. Does the second concur?
Yes.
All right. May I have a roll call vote on this motion, please?
Councilmember Machezik,
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson,
Yes.
Mayor Giles,
Yes.
Councilmember Nielsen,
No.
Councilmember Thrower.
Yes.
Thank you, council. That motion carries, and we will see on May 8th and the findings of fact conclusions. Thank you, Meredith.
Mhm.
Our third public hearing, there were some people that signed up, and I will recognize them when we get to the public hearing portion. And this is the development agreement. And Meredith, thanks for not taking your seat. You're going to help us on this. This public hearing is Agenda Bill 25-078. The purpose of the public hearing associated with this topic is to hear testimony related to a planned unit, the development agreement, DA-25-02, which is associated with the planned unit development preliminary plan, PUD 24-03, subdivision preliminary plat for the St. Luke's McCall Foundation and McCall Memorial Hospital District. I'm going to call for a motion to open this public hearing.
Second.
Thank you, council. Motion's been made and seconded. May I have a, let's see, this one is a voice vote. Is that correct, Bessie Jo?
Yes.
All in favor of opening the third public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that motion passed. We are now open with this public hearing. And Meredith, could you give us the highlights on what's before us tonight.
Yes, as a point of order, I think we need to remind Councilmember Nelson that he might need to go take a seat for any item involving the development.
Yeah, wasn't sure if I go now or after the public hearing. Go now.
You go now.
Okay.
Thanks.
I'm involved in St. Luke's, so.
Thanks, Meredith, for that reminder. I don't think the rest of us have any ex parte or any conflicts because we've been through this before, but thank you for reminding us. Appreciate it.
Happy to help.
All right, proceed.
Okay. So as your subject line stated, this is the request to approve the development agreement that was requested in the process of making an approval motion for the planned unit development and subdivision preliminary plat for the St. Luke's McCall Foundation and Hospital District Housing Project. The direction was to include within the language of the development agreement detailed information on participation with the local housing incentive program, which has been provided, as well as the plan for phasing both infrastructure and vertical development, and also incorporating the language about the parks dedication and maintenance that will be operating on the pathways sections within the development. So those revisions and enhancements have been made to the development agreement and are shown within your packet. I think exhibits B and C on the end of this agenda item are very helpful visualizations in seeing how the phasing of both the infrastructure and vertical construction will occur. There are again those rainbow colored maps that show color by color, phase by phase, when things would happen. And you'll note that that is in line with the 2 comments received from the public prior to this meeting, again, supporting or requesting a phased approach to development with this process. These are, again, marked as possible or indicated as possible for phasing based on the hydraulic model done for the property and the option 2 recommendation from Bowen Collins, which is our hydraulic consultant for the water system. And all of the indications that I have support this method functioning okay. So with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Meredith, real quick question. You referred to 2 public comments. Those are the written ones we received, and they're in our packet.
Yes.
And they were, highlight their points again.
Yeah, so from, I believe, John, I'm going to not pronounce his last name very well. There's a lot of letters, I can't speak Polish. I'm so sorry, world. And then Eva Prince both indicated that a phased approach would be preferred. There are residents within the Wildwood condominiums directly to the west, and they'd like to see especially the infrastructure phased in 2 parts so that the disturbance to the woodland area on the site and the noise does not have to all happen at once.
Thank you. And that is the current proposal before us to phase.
Yep.
Great. Thanks for that clarification. Council, any quick questions for Meredith? Okay. This is a public hearing, and I think David Petty, you had signed up to talk to us tonight. So
I should mention Steve Millman is online and Jenny Rumley from the Hospital Foundation is in the room in case you wish to hear from them at all tonight.
thank you. Would you like me to ask the applicant right now if they'd like to make further comments then?
That would be appropriate, Mr. Mayor.
That would be appropriate?
Yes, it would.
So let's start with Mr. Milliman. Steve, can you hear me okay?
I can, Mayor Bob. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, loud and clear. Jesus.
Yes, sir.
Here, I'll slide my chair back.
Yes, Steve, go ahead.
Okay, well, thanks for the opportunity, Mayor Bob, members of the council. Steve Milliman, 706 North First, representing the applicants on this project. I think the council's quite familiar with the project, so I won't take a lot of your time. The development agreement, I think, captures all of the issues that have been addressed throughout the process, including infrastructure phasing, platting phasing, both of which have been detailed as Meredith pointed out and consistent with input from the city's engineers. Development agreement includes the obligation to construct and improve pathways and to year-round maintain a connecting pathway from the Wildwood condominiums to the railroad pathway. The plan has incorporated the requested changes from the Wildwood condominiums. The development agreement confirms that the units will be deed restricted local housing units, and in addition, will have rents calibrated to incomes. And the agreement also confirms the parks requirements as recommended by the City Parks and Recs Advisory Committee. If you have any questions whatsoever, I'd be happy to try to address them.
Council, any questions for Mr. Milliman?
None for me.
I think we're good, Steve. Thanks for that quick review. Jenny Rumley, you're in the room. Is there anything you would like to add from your perspective?
No.
Yeah,
please, and state your name.
Evening, I'm Jenny Rumley, 1008 Bitterroot. The only thing I can say is housing continues to be a pressing issue for all of us. In healthcare, it can really make a difference between great outcomes and lesser outcomes. So we really are excited to be taking on this big, bold, expensive, stressful project. And there's a reason why no one is doing affordable housing. It's just darn hard. But we're going to do our best. And we really appreciate the support that we've received from our community and from the city. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But we're hoping to have a groundbreaking this August, and I hope you'll all be there.
Thank you, Jenny. Any quick questions for Ms. Rumley? Okay. All right, let's move on to public hearing portion. Public comment. David Petty, welcome. You could state your name and address for the record.
Dave Petty, 912B Fairway Drive, McCall. Thanks, Mayor Bob and Council. It's funny, we've had a bunch of conversations about code already tonight. At our last city council meeting, I was able to address a little bit Parks and Rec alleviations. Mr. Milliman is very good at finding alleviations in the code that work for development contracts, and I applaud him for that. It is very difficult to have workforce housing, and I want to applaud St. Luke's because it is the first one that has come before the city that actually limits the amount of rent based on income. But I wanted to point out a couple things, addressing code perhaps. This property was mostly purchased by the hospital district with taxpayer funds. These houses will eventually be owned by St. Luke's, which will take them off the property tax rolls. And in the meantime, we're giving them $760,000 that we don't have anywhere for the $20,000 workforce housing allotment. I know, like Rick and I can't afford, well, maybe Rick can. I can't afford Mr. Milliman, but I could sure use some help getting housing for my employees, as well as the hospital, and as well as all the other small businesses in town. To allocate this much money to one project, when you have another 130 unit project coming up, we're going to need to do some number crunching in our budget to do this. Thank you.
Thank you, David. All right, at this point, I'm going to call on Mr. Milliman again. Is there anything after listening to public comment that you would like to address or rebut?
Yes, Mayor Bob, thank you. Just to correct the record, the property was purchased by the Hospital Foundation. The hospital district has an option to acquire a 1/2 interest in it once this entitlement process is completed, which the hospital district board intends to exercise. At no point now or at any point that's envisioned by the property owners will St. Luke's own any of these units. They will be owned by either the foundation or the hospital district. The incentives to which Dave referred are provided for by your recently enacted resolution, which is greatly appreciated. A number of meetings ago, Mayor Bob, you asked me, how can we get more local housing units? And my answer then and my answer now is by spending money, by being a participant, by being a player, by doing everything that the city can do to incentivize these kinds of projects. And that's what your incentive program does. I would point out that under the terms of the development agreement, the incentive payments are made only at such time as building permit applications are filed, and at which time the deed restrictions are placed on those units. So you will be paying the incentives only on units that actually are constructed. And the parties certainly have some funds to commence that process, but the full construction is going to take a fair amount of time and will be dependent on the parties' ability to raise the money. On the issue of code alleviations, the Planning and Zoning Commission unanimously recommended the alleviations that are present in this application, and our PUD ordinance specifically calls out the allowance in PUDs for certain code alleviations. And the parks alleviation, which was approved by the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee, was a modest alleviation. It was to alleviate the requirement for a portion of the in lieu fee, but not all of it. Unless there are other questions, that's all I have to add. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Milliman. Jenny, anything you would like to add? Thank you. So as part of our process, not only does the applicant get to rebut, but if any new information has been provided, then those of you in the audience also get to address us again. I don't believe I have heard any new information. Meredith, I was going to ask you that question, and also our attorney, Bill Nichols.
I haven't heard any new information from Steve's rebuttal. I would just clarify as a point of order that Planning and Zoning's recommendation deferred the parks alleviation to the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee because they felt it was more appropriate for parks to make a recommendation to council on that alleviation itself. But that recommendation from the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee for a partial alleviation was unanimous.
And that's not new information, correct?
Nope, that's still within the record.
Thank you. Bill, do you think we're on solid ground here?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, all of the items that were referenced in Mr. Milliman's rebuttal are part of the record.
Thank you, Bill. Council, you're ready to close the public hearing? I'll call for a motion.
We close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to close the public hearing. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The hearing is closed and it's time to deliberate. Julie, your thoughts?
I don't have any concerns. I think the development agreement as Mr. Milliman had outlined, touches on all the issues in terms of the deed restriction, the pathway construction, the phasing and everything. So I don't see anything missing in there. So I'm good with it.
Thank you, Julie. Mike,
No concern.
Colby?
None from me.
And I'm good with that. So I will call for a motion then to approve.
EA-25-02 as written and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents.
Second.
Thank you. Motion has been made and seconded to approve this development agreement. May I have a roll call vote on this motion?
Councilmember Thrower,
Yes.
Councilmember Machezek,
Yes.
Mayor Giles,
Yes.
Councilmember Nielsen,
Yes.
Thank you, council. That motion carries. And Lyle, you may please join us up front. We're going to move into our business agenda. And Meredith, you're still in the spotlight. Would you please lead us through the next topic?
I will, but you might have to ask Councilmember Nelson to sit down again. All right, so you have before you a request to adopt the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and decision document for the planned unit development 2403 and subdivision preliminary plat 2407 for the St. Luke's McCall Foundation and McCall Memorial Hospital District. On these items, you opened and conducted your public hearing on March 17th and voted to request findings and conclusions be drafted consistent with approval of the subject application. We again addressed the item on March 27th to give staff more time to prepare this long novel of a document. And now this document is before you, including language to take into account the development agreement very recently approved for the mayor's signature and memorialize this approval into the record so that the applicants can move on and start doing some site work.
Okay.
And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions for Meredith? I think we're all good. Thanks, Meredith. So we're looking at making a motion to adopt findings of fact, conclusions of law.
I'll make a motion to adopt findings of fact, conclusions of law, and decision for PUD 24-03 and subdivision 24-07 as written and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents.
Second.
Thank you. All right, the motion has been made and seconded. I'll call for a roll call vote on this motion.
Councilmember Machezek,
Yes.
Councilmember Thrower,
Yes.
Mayor Giles,
Yes.
Councilmember Nielsen,
Yes.
All right, that motion carries. Lyle, I'm pretty sure you get to join us. We're going to talk about Parks and Rec subjects.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Steve. All right, this is Agenda Bill 25-079. We're going to talk about our public boat launch user fee options. And Kurt's going to lead us through that discussion. Welcome, Kurt.
Good evening, Council. Kurt Wolf, Parks and Recreation Director. So this is a third touch, technically, with the Council on ramp fees this year following the adoption of a fee schedule for 2024 boating season. In December 19th, we revisited how it went and gave you an overview of how the 2024 boating season went. And then we were back in front of you on February 28th with a work session. To further discuss that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, especially if you haven't had a chance to look at some of the details associated with the proposed changes for the 2025 boating season. So that said, the agenda bill before you outlines what we consider two options based on those work sessions. And that would be option one is we don't change the fees other than minor adjustments to the commercial annual permit fee, which would remove the self-reporting and tracking of launches during peak hours. We found that didn't necessarily generate a significant amount of revenue. It was cumbersome, hard to track, and just for the most part not worth it. And correct me if I'm wrong, Bill or Bessie Joe, if that was the option we chose to take, I do not believe that would require another public hearing, just an adjustment to that fee resolution for 2025. The other option, which is staff's recommendation, would be to keep the day use and the annual pass fee the same for in-state residents, but add an out-of-state resident similar to Kootenai County that they recently adopted for 2025. And then make that same change with a slight increase to the annual commercial fee to offset that revenue of those peak hour launches, but just do away with the self-reporting. In that schedule, something that we also took from the Kootenai County fee schedule that I think would help us collect some data and give us a tracking point would be to incorporate a sticker for annual passes as well as commercial passers for their fleets. If you have another boat, whether you're a private or a commercial operator on the private side, if you had, say, a sailboat that you registered with an annual launch pass, but you also had a fishing boat, it would just be, for the most part, the price of another sticker for that boat at, say, $10. That would also help us track how many boats are out there. And same on the commercial side. It's a little different there. We would suggest something along the lines of your commercial permit gets you 5 stickers. And then if you have more vessels in your fleet or on your account, you submit how many stickers you want and then an invoice for that. And then we would have an idea of how many vessels are associated with these commercial accounts and uses. So those are our recommendations. Happy to answer any questions. And this is, for the most part, just to give us guideline or some direction on developing that fee resolution to bring back to you. If it's that option we just discussed, we would schedule a public hearing. And if we're not making any changes other than to remove the self-reporting and tracking during peak hours, we would just bring that adjusted resolution back to you for approval.
So Kurt, just to clarify, in our packet, the agenda bill title page, I call it, there are 2 options. The top one is option 1 that you discussed. And then the recommendation from you and your staff and committees would be option 2, the second one. And I believe option 2 is showing up on another page. It's called McCall Boat Ramps Fee Ordinance Increase of Fees Recommendation.
Correction. Staff is recommending option 1, Mayor Bob, which would be to adopt a new fee structure to include out-of-state boat ramp fees. That adjustment would trigger a public hearing. Option 2 is just a minor adjustment to the fees that were adopted in 2020.
Thanks for that clarification.
Yep.
But I am right on this table because this table says vessels register in Idaho, $15 per day. Vessels registered outside of Idaho, $30 per day. And that's what your recommendation is.
Correct. Yep.
Thank you for explaining that. Questions for Kurt?
Yeah, I had one. Kurt, you said that the $750 launch fee didn't generate a lot of revenue. Do you know if that's just there weren't as many boat launches as we expected from commercial operators, or is there an indication that people just weren't paying the fee?
It very well could be a combination of both. It's very difficult to enforce and be down there all the time. I wouldn't say it's completely inaccurate. Again, it was tough to kind of follow up at the end of the season and get those accurate numbers. So,
do you think based on the revenue that you got from those launch fees last year, increasing the annual pass by 500, do you think that will kind of even out
I do, based on the numbers that we collected and that we had that, I believe, included in the packet during that work session that showed each of those revenue streams.
And Kurt, the justification for the extra fee for out of state is that in-state boaters are paying a fee for their boat license in Idaho, and the out of state does not, and so they're not sharing the expense. Is that
correct? And that's a great question, Lyle. We've gone round and round. We've heard, well, should it just be resident taxpayers versus non-resident taxpayers? We also receive a lot of funding from both the county and the state for waterways and improvements. So we got feedback from County Waterways that it would be more applicable to charge that to out-of-state. The other big consideration there is our growing concern with invasive species coming in from out-of-state boaters. Doesn't necessarily mean they're not coming in from in-state, but from what we've heard, it's nice to have one more touch on out-of-state boaters to make that ask, and also recognizing that as this concern grows, we're going to have expenses associated with managing that, those invasive species, or whether it's inspection stations or whatever it might be. So that was other further justification for incorporating in-state and out-of-state fee schedule.
And Kurt, you said that's consistent with Kootenai County's approach?
It is, and a lot of others locations. It's when it comes to ramp fees, it's really all over the place, depending on where you look. But it was, as we discussed in that work session, it was interesting to see last year when we adopted these fees, they seemed a little on the high side statewide. But we had also heard when we were doing research that a lot of those other fees were, put into place 5, 10 plus years ago. We heard that they were considering increasing, and then to see this year that Kootenai County increased their fees, and they're right on par with what we had adopted in last year's resolution.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Kind of on the same train of thought as Julie is on the increase of 500. Just doing quick math at one launch per day for 60 days, which was maybe our summer. That's about $450. If you did, that's just one additional launch per day. I mean, reasonably, how many launches do you think a commercial company is doing per day?
I don't know the answer to that. There is a lot of traffic early in the morning before 10, before those peak hours really go into place because of the congestion down there. So we do see that, especially with the rental companies. But if that's something we want to consider, because we have heard higher numbers. Again, this number is reflective of just what we're seeing kind of elsewhere. We already are on the high side, but if we would like to consider that number to be a little higher, we sure can entertain that and bring that back in the resolution.
Council, what's your thoughts on that?
I was just going to comment that those launch fees apply just to peak hours. So it would really be hitting more the kind of like the 2-hour rentals, that kind of thing, but not the all-day rentals.
Correct.
I think keeping it simple and accountable is probably the direction that seems best. I did query some folks on it, and commercial. Yeah, I know the commercial folks, the $750 per launch is a bit cumbersome, as you said, to track, and because the commercial it's rental companies, it's other people that repair boats. So it's not just the rental companies that are commercial users. It's the somebody repairing a boat or dropping off a boat for a customer and taking it to their lake house or whatever. So across the board, it seems keeping it kind of simple and straightforward so that we can have a successful program seems like the best way to me, rather than making it cumbersome for staff to try to track all of this. And better to have it honest and have people just doing it like, here's what you do. It's simple. Even getting into the peak hours, off peak hours seems a bit challenging.
I guess to be clear, I'm also in favor of that. I was just questioning whether or not the $500 increase was adequate.
for commercial users if you bumped it up to that and let them.
And we saw, and we reached out to a number of the commercial operators, and it was, we heard, increase it to 1,500, increase it to 2,000, increase it to 1,200. Those numbers were all over the place. So the commercial operators were receptive to just making that increase and doing away with the PQ. So if that number needs to go up, I don't know that and we can always increase it, in years to come too. I'd like to try and get to a point where we can move forward and not revisit this annually, and adjust those as, the price of everything goes up just with time, on a 5-year basis or something along those lines. But so that said, I would like to try and settle on a number that we can bring back in that resolution where we can move forward, adopt the fees, and hopefully not revisit this annually.
So it sounds like there's interest in doing away with the $750 per launch during peak hours, right? Because that's complicated and hard to track. What's your recommendation, council? The current proposal is 1,500. Did you want to go higher, like the 2,000 that Kurt considered? Lyle?
I follow Kurt's recommendations, talk with the different people that kind of have an expectation and just stick with what's recommended to us.
Okay, Julie?
Yeah, I'm fine with that too.
Mike?
Sticking with what's recommended, meaning the recommendation to do the separate for out of state and then go to 1,500 year commercial.
Yes.
That's not what you guys are thinking.
Yeah, the flat fee for commercial.
Okay, Colby?
Yeah, I think I just have the question on the additional vessel stickers, just to kind of discuss that a little bit. Because as Mike pointed out, that this is, there's multiple services that deal with more than 5 boats, but it might just be once a year. How would that work with, say like a concierge service or a boat mechanic for per additional vessel?
Those are good questions because I'm thinking the same thing. Like, so for instance, I put in a ski boat, I put in a drift boat, and go, I do these different uses. So last year I paid the annual fee, but if we pay the annual fee by the person or by the commercial operation, or is it tied specifically to a boat? So would that mean, if I'm going to put multiple boats in at the boat ramp, different ones, then do I get a different, I'm paying for that fee for an annual pass per boat or per the individual? What if Colby needs me to put his party barge in the water and I say, yeah, no problem. And did we go pay the one? Do we pay the $15 because I'm the one trailering it? Do I guess it brings up a question there. Is that kind of where you were going, or?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I guess I would assume that the personal boats, they would be purchasing their annual pass, but for the commercial end of things, like what is the line between when you need to get additional stickers?
Right.
Is that just for like rental companies?
Yeah, and the other one we discussed and we got that question back and it seemed to make sense was, or the boats in your account. So if you're offering that, you've got boat storage, which we recognize as a new business, which is, also helped with parking and congestion down there because they're bringing that valet service. And so to me, that's more of the boats within your account versus the boats within your fleet. And you bring that boat down, we see it's got a sticker on it, and we know they're either tied to that commercial operation or they've got an annual pass. But again, we've gone round and round. I don't know that there is a perfect way to do this because there are so many different situations and operations out there. But this is kind of what we've settled on based on what we've seen in other areas, what we've dealt with here, and a good way for us to at least track how many boats have stickers on them.
Yeah, because it seems like you've got commercial users that are delivering new boats to people.
Yeah.
For instance, so how are you putting a sticker on that boat if they're just delivering it? They come up from the valley or they're from Prestige, right, or Water Sports or Mile High, Power Sports or whatever, and they deliver the boat, they put it in the water, it goes. Or what if they're picking up a boat that's got an issue? You know, they're dragging someone's sailboat out of the water because it needs to be worked on. And the owner doesn't need to have the sticker on it because they put their boat in the marina. They left it, so they put their sailboat in, they left it there. That was it. And now, it just seems like maybe it needs to run with the person more than the boat in those situations. I don't know, but the goal would seem to be make it easy and accountable so that people follow the rules and that we can have a system that collects the money to fund waterways management, et cetera.
That's kind of what I assumed. It was running with the person. And then if somebody had, 3 boats under their ownership, they could get the $10 extra sticker for their boats. Same thing with a commercial operator. Let's just say a boat rental place, easy example, right? They have a commercial annual pass and then they get stickers for each of their boats. And then if it's, say, a boat storage place that has a service that'll deliver the boat to the lake, then I would say that it seems like you would have that operator wouldn't have the pass. It would be the boat owner that would have the pass.
Mr. Mayor, members of this council, I think what you might want to discuss now is whether you put a different item on this schedule. Because it sounds like the boat storage place or the marine mechanic is a different issue than the rental places. So the storage and the mechanic, you anticipate that you've got one person that's fixing a boat or bringing a boat out of storage and putting it in the lake. So you could say, yep, that person's got a commercial pass and they can do that for however many boats they want.
Yeah.
Or you could, maybe there's a different thing, but I think you can address that separately if you want to, because you're not voting to approve these fees today. You're only what goes in front of the public for a hearing so that you can then make a decision then. So if there's something you want Kurt to add to this list as part of that public hearing process, then we can work on that.
That seems to be there's a variety of different types of commercial users, and it seems like that's what we want to keep clean and simple and effective.
Well, so maybe then there's something separate for people that do launch once. They have their boat at a dock, either at the marina or at their property, their house, their lakeside house. Maybe there's some sort of a permit that they get if they can show that they have parking space on the lake, that they're not coming in and out all the time. They just have a separate sticker for that. And that way, if someone if the guy pulling out the boat to repair it, comes back in, there'll be that sticker saying like, okay, well, they are normally on the lake and, they're not just a regular user going in and out every day all summer. But yeah, I'm sorry, Forrest, go ahead.
It seems like if you just require the owner of the boat to have a sticker, it would resolve the issue. If the commercial operators own the boats, they pay the annual pass, they buy the stickers for their boats. Someone that's running a valet service or a storage could have the owner of the boat buy the sticker for the boat, or they could buy it for them. That would be a personal annual pass, right?
Correct.
And people that are making 1 or 2 movements a year can just buy a day pass. So it seems like all the categories are covered.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing. And that's what we can bring back. We just, for those commercial operators that are running boat storage or valet services, they could require their customers to purchase their annual pass, or they could do it for them, but that pass has to have a sticker, or they have to just buy day pass if they only think they're going to have their boat brought down there 5 times a year. It might be the way to go, but that's up to them to decide. So I think it is, what I'm hearing is have the day pass, the annual pass, and the commercial. If you've got a commercial fleet, say you're a rental company, you got 30 boats in your fleet, you're going to need to buy 25 additional stickers if we include 5. And then the reason I only say, that it could come with 5 is we've got those other commercial operators that are a lot less impactful, such as the dock construction companies, which they may only have 3 boats in their fleet. And it just depends on what project they're working on that they need to, and what boat they need to have or what. So that was kind of the intention there. So that's what I'm hearing. I think Forrest summarized it well. If that sounds good, that's what we'll bring back in a resolution.
The only thing I feel uneasy about, I think we're aware of a number of commercial operations that have a whole fleet of boats, and that's why I was asking the question if you were comfortable having an annual pass commercial of $2,000 instead of the $1,500. So I'm going to ask that question one more time and go through the group. Lyle?
As I stay the same with, I think, based on what conversations Kurt's had, I think it's $1,500, $2,000 looking at the scope of the business that are involved. I don't think the revenue is that significant to the city. We're just talking about a few. I think it's the consistency of the conversations that Kurt's had already. The expectation of is there an expectation of people you've talked to, whether it's 1,500 or 2,000?
Well, we need one number, right? Because you need to get
But
specific.
there's some question too, but what is are we just arbitrary? Here's the counter. Are we arbitrarily as the city council throwing out numbers like, oh, I like this one. I like 1495 or I like 1775. That sounds good. Or are we coming from a standpoint of like, here's the funding request. Here's what we need to make it happen. Here's what we estimate. Are we going for more of a data driven or are we just throwing numbers out? That might help answer the question.
Yeah, we're basing that off of what was adopted last year, what we saw in revenues from those peak launches. It was a starting point last year. As far as, if we want to try and cover all of our expenses associated with managing waterfront properties, I think that number is going to be very unrealistic to any operator or business. That's just the reality of the situation. We've got, continuous maintenance of the facility. There's, I have a lot of respect for the need to do water quality monitoring. There's a cost associated with that. And so the cost of management and it far exceeds any revenue we're ever going to be able to generate.
So we're trying to offset the cost that we currently have by way of trying to manage and have some sense of who's using the ramp, how many people are using the ramp, have some money that helps offset it.
Yep,
so
it's an opportunity.
I think we might want to go a little bit easy on it than just like jump right up to something like $2,000 for the commercial or I wonder how many people actually that have boats and trailered them in and out of was I the first guy to sign up? How many people actually did it? What's do people that say, live in town or stay in town or have second homes in town, live on the lake or what have you, at some point in time, they're like, really? Now the city's pulling another $100 tax from me? I feel like maybe we want to, is it automatically now you've got a boat? Oh, by the way, you're going to throw another $100 at the city and they're going to tax you on this. Is that going to be a public sentiment? And do we need to have people's feedback and response if that's a fear or a concern, or is it a concern? I don't know.
Well, if you just launch once, though, you're just paying a $15.
Yeah, so that's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, and we'll hear that at the public hearing.
Yeah,
exactly.
I think for me, that's the thing. I don't think we should even have the daily launch fee that every boat that goes in the lake that lives here should pay $100 for the year. You want to put your boat in the water, pay $100. Every boat. Got the cabin on the lake, pay $100. And make it easy. Maybe we can do an out-of-state daily launch fee or something like that, but I don't know. There's
so many different users. You make a point. It's just there's so many different users. What about the family that comes up from Boise and
Yeah.
brings their little runabout and it came up once?
Yeah.
Well, one thing we could do with the commercial fee is, I mean, there are different users there too. And like Kurt was saying, there's the boat maintenance guy that might have 3 in his fleet. But then we have boat rental businesses that I don't know how much they have, but maybe some of the big ones have 20 or something like that, and they're launching multiple times. Maybe the individual boat sticker fee can go up, and that'll kind of account for those more impactful users, and we leave the flat fee the same or lower.
So if we're giving you direct, you're hearing that we are leaning towards the staff's recommendation, and that by having a public hearing, we really need to hear from the public as far as what.
Yeah, our recommendation is based off the previous work sessions, the 2024 boating season, and what we saw, and to bring that before the community in a public hearing here in a few weeks. I think it's easy to add the separation of of that valet service, so to speak. If they've got boats in that service, they need to have an annual sticker on them, or they need to pay a day pass if they're only planning on doing it. That's up to them to manage how they want to do that. But that makes sense to me versus the 1,500 and then however many boats are in their account. So we can easily add that, and that's our recommendation. And that's again based off of, if we could go, we've been all over the place with this, and so those are based on the previous work sessions and the 2024 boating season and what we're seeing in other counties and communities.
Council, would you like to make a motion? I believe it's called option 1, and ask Kurt to bring that back to us and with the specifics, and then there will be a public hearing on that.
Is it a motion or recommended action?
Just directing staff, aren't we?
Yeah, I'm ready. That motion would be the top one on our recommended action. I move we direct staff to make revisions to the fee structure to reflect those outlined in option 1 and schedule a public hearing for adoption of a new resolution or new fee structure.
So I apologize. I asked for a motion, but it was intended for direction to staff. Is that correct? That's what Joe and Kurt.
Sorry. So the motion was to direct staff to do that. So that's an appropriate motion.
That's an appropriate motion.
Second.
Thank you, Lyle. Is there a second on that?
Second.
All right. Does this require a roll call vote since it's fees involved?
Well, you're not adopting any fees, Mr. Mayor, so I think you can do a voice vote on this.
All right. Thank you for that advice, Bill. All in favor of this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that motion carries. Kurt, good work on that. And I look forward to having that public hearing and getting more input on it.
We'll get that scheduled.
Thank you. Okay, Kurt is up next. Our next topic under Parks and Rec is a concession proposal at our waterfront area. Let me flip my page over to that. This is a request to consider Mountain Meadow Adventure Rentals waterfront concession proposal.
So again, good evening, Council. Kurt Wolf, Parks and Recreation Director. So this is following the work session again on February 28th, where we discuss fees as well as concessions on the waterfront properties. To alleviate any confusion, we came out of that work session. Council was, for the most part, in consensus with potentially, if we didn't receive any proposals during the calendar window, to take a year off. Again, to alleviate some confusion, that deadline was that same day by 5 p.m. and we did receive a proposal that same day by the deadline. So this is why this is in front of you for consideration. Based on the guidelines within the adopted resolution for commercial activity in city parks, the council has the options that we've outlined here. They can review and adopt, review and deny, or, sorry. Didn't realize I had an alarm set. The other option is based on some of the recommendations that we've heard from the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee. You also saw the recommendation from the Big Payette Lake Water Quality Council in their letter, as well as Valley County Waterways. And then you have staff's recommendations. So those recommendations reflect everything we heard during public comment, what was discussed in that work session as well. To give some clarification on, option 2 is that's really reflective of how staff feels, and what we heard from the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee is to revisit this. It's outlined in the applicant's proposal that they are open to considering guidelines and adjustments to best meet the community's needs down there. So what that would entail as far as option 2 would be to provide us with what you would like to see as far as stipulations or considerations for a concession for the applicant can consider. They could choose not to and just the item's done. They don't have to have a concession, or if they're amenable to those and based on working conversations with the applicant, they are amenable to suggestions. They've stated that in their proposal. So that's option 2. As far as staff's recommendation, just to give some clarification, again, during that work session on February 28th, we don't feel strong that we have a concession or we don't have a concession. We do have concern over what it might look like to not have a concession. These commercial operators are already using the lake and they will continue to use the lake. We really don't have much of a choice in that. The county can choose to regulate that, and we can be a voice in promoting that. But at this time, they are still operating. This is not introducing a new commercial operation on the lake. They have been for the last however many years, and they plan to continue to operate on the lake. This would just give us some ability to work with them, manage how that operation looks like. Obviously, there's some revenue stream associated with it. So that's staff's reflection and recommendation is that we do it for a year under the condition for renewal that we all agree on those stipulations. And some of that is driven largely because I think what staff would ultimately like to see down there would require some infrastructure adjustments. We'd like to get them off of the beach completely, but to do so, I think we'd have to do some expansion to the dock to create that concession space, which requires, encroachment permitting with IDL, and that's just not something we have the time to get accomplished this year. So that's where staff's recommendation is coming from, and I'll leave it at that. Again, we discussed it at the December 28th work session, and that's why we've provided those 3 options.
So Kurt, that was a really good introduction. Option 2 in our packet, it says suggest items and or guidelines to be included in a concession proposal. And then the applicant would review that and you would ask them, are you agreeable to these things? It'd be resubmitted and council would review at a future meeting. And perhaps that would be a 1-year trial.
And that could be a public hearing, which is what we also heard in that work session and what we heard this evening from during public comment. So that meeting could be a public hearing.
Okay. And do you have suggestions for us? I'm going to ask council for their thoughts on this topic. And then it would be helpful if you had some suggestions too, to get us thinking about things that, that we really feel strongly about.
I just, in summary, I think for this first year, we're pretty limited on what we could do, what I'd ideally like to see, and what the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee would like to see, which would be to get it fully off of the beach and out onto a dock. That concession more out into the navigable waterway. And again, that would take some improvements to the infrastructure down there and some permitting. I think we could make steps this first year to get a majority of that use off the beach. This proposal recommends, 50% of what was in the previous concession and utilize the dock more. Obviously, it's hard to know exactly what that would look like until we see that operation. So that's kind of number one. The other one we heard from the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee was, further negotiations on the fee rate. A percentage of gross rental rate would be ideal. We did hear from the applicant that they would consider that, but under the current circumstances and infrastructure in place, that they would not necessarily be amenable to that until we could make those improvements to the dock, and they would have more of that valued commercial concession space. So that's just what we've heard. Again, exactly what that looks like would take some time. That's why I said just for a year. Again, it doesn't mean if it was not approved that we couldn't revisit this in a year. I'd also like to spend some time revisiting the commercial guidelines in that previous resolution that was outlined in our pros plan, as well as the public comment we heard in that pros plan. So, but that's going to take a little bit of time to get through.
Could you talk to us about if one of these options that did a trial run for a year, what are the advantages, do you think, to the public and to the city, like in terms of administering traffic on the boat ramp? Could you talk to us about that?
I definitely have concern as to what it might look like to not have one down there. They're still going to be using the ramp. These vessels are still going to be out on the lake. We have less say in how that operation functions. And I don't know what impacts that would have. I've got starting into some conversations with PD and legal on, how much enforceability do we have with commercial activity on public docks, let alone the public ramp? If we do have issues this summer, not having a concession and all that traffic is just in and out as their customers are reserving those watercraft. But I don't, until we know. That's my only reservation for postponing it a year or not doing it. And that's why I just recommended for a year to continue those conversations.
Thank you, Kurt. Council, I'm sure you got lots of questions. So now's the time to ask Kurt.
For the question to just a position, I think the public sentiment, there's times when public sentiment is really valuable, and with the leeway that council has, we don't always have council, that we don't always have leeway. So where I'm coming from, I think the public comments that we heard today reflect the large public sentiment that once you give permission, it's going to be there and it's going to grow. That's their business model. And I don't think we want to go down that path. But cut right to the chase as quick as I could. I'm on option 3 and a potentially of option 2, but my thinking of that the Legacy Bar beach and the park belong to everybody, and that it should not include concession and give up beach space for that. I think I like their business and I like them. I just think at this particular time and moment, and what we've heard, Big Pale Lakes Water Quality Council not recommending it. This is the moment I think we need to listen to all the lake users, and I realize it does not really limit the amount of very much of boat traffic on the lake. But so anyhow, I'm on option 3, and might consider option 2. And option 2 to me would be to be non-motorized, and I don't think that's their business model. And I respect all the things and the way they run their businesses. It's just a public. I don't think we're set up for it this year. And the last meeting we had about let it breathe for a year ought to be the way we go.
Julie?
Yeah, I mean, right now I'm inclined to vote for option 3 as well. Forgot. I was getting comfortable in my chair there. I think there are a lot of questions. I mean, you know, I think one, we need to stop denying that things don't impact the lake, even as small maybe as they seem. I mean, where there's, you know, does having boats out on the dock, on the beach, allow them to have a larger fleet that people would be able, that they can rent, that they can store at their off-site or their, you know, off the lake location? I don't know, you know, I don't know those kind of things. I mean, so that could be an impact of having them have that accessibility to the lake may allow them to grow their business larger, and then there's more boats, right? I highly oppose having any use of the public beach. I mean, it's just so congested there. And having, you know, the little things, the personal watercraft, I mean, it's just not compatible with all the non-motorized users, the swimmers, and it's just so congested. I just don't see that as even if I were to consider option 2, is that being a viable, you know, part of this proposal. But, you know, I think we did discuss this. I know we, at the time, didn't have a proposal in hand that was submitted on time, and we had decided that it wasn't the city's place to really go out and look for a concession at the time, that it would be a better option to let the whole thing rest for a year, see how it goes. I'm still in favor of that. I think there's just, you know, too much going on, too many pressures on the lake. You know, hopefully we'll get some water quality data going this year or next year, something like that. I know that, you know, that may not give us all the answers and everything, but I think it's kind of time to just stop, you know, putting more things on the lake and continuing to you know, favor those sorts of things. And I would definitely be interested in seeing how that goes for a year.
Mike? I have expressed my concern in the past with engineers on the property, and I think by and large, there's a vast number of people in our community that would probably rather not see commercial use on public property that is some of the most used and valuable. And I think we should stick with our plan of sitting for a year on it at the minimum. And I think the data point that I think we need is, before we talk about a specific proposal, I think we need to have a real good look at whether or not it's appropriate to have any commercial concessionaire at Legacy Park or at the docks or on any city dock. We have another commercial user that we approved for a year and we never came back and revisited like we said we were going to. So I think for the nominal amount of income that the city generates from these commercial users, is it worth the impact to the general public? And I value, especially, you know, what Rick said, introducing, you know, the subject of when it started many years ago. I'm pretty much on option 3.
Thank you, Mike. Colby?
I'm, you know, obviously it's the last minute proposal here. Would be interesting to see what would be the other options for a commercial operation there. The fact is that there's rental companies here, and if they don't keep at least part of their fleet in the water, that's a trailer, a truck, all the crap that goes in the water more times every day, then it jams up the whole everything down there, trying to get people set up on their little jet ski things or in their boat. And when you end up with more trucks idling in the water, I feel like it causes more environmental damage to be adding the number of launches per day than it does setting up on a dock, but I'm agree with not using the beachfront, but the dock facility that we have currently is not adequate to address public use and commercial use. Yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, there'd be no boats on the lake, right? You know, all you guys with the lake houses can just go swim, you know? So yeah, I don't know. I don't know where I stand on this one. I think that we would need to see a more robust proposal, and the timing, as you suggested, probably doesn't lend itself to having a realistic implementation date this summer, but who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I don't question for a minute the effort that you put in towards this and the way that you, and I think it goes without saying that Kurt does an incredible job with the city and what you do for parks and trying to manage and trying to look for all the different aspects of it and trying to, you know, manage the whole situation. But this is, you know, it's like Bill says, you know, if we're talking about the lake, it's important to people in our community, and I think we need to really take a serious look at it, and I don't think we need to rush.
Yeah.
Kurt, this, as you heard at many of our meetings, this is a really tough one. We ask questions like, are there going to be similar number of boats if we pick option 1 or option 3? And the answer usually comes back yes. So in some of our minds, it's like the environmental effects might be similar, but we're also dealing with social effects and the quality of life on the lake. And I think our council has thought about this very deeply and listened to people. So I'm comfortable with where I think we're headed. Would someone like to make a motion?
Yeah. So I've got kind of curious on this one, because do we want to consider how to even consider the possibility of moving ahead with a commercial operation, or just say, no, we don't even want to consider moving ahead with a personal or a commercial operation?
With this particular operation, or you mean?
And like what are we thinking as far as that goes?
I think we should make that an agenda meeting, agenda item with really looking for public comment on, does our community want to see a commercial operation at Legacy Park or any city park or on any city-owned property on the lake?
Yeah, I think Mike's got that right, and that's what we talked about last time. So we're really, that's a good question, Colby. We're just making a decision on a specific proposal.
Can I say something, Bob?
Yes.
Just, I want to flag one other issue that I think makes this really complicated and difficult, is that it's a very hard amenity to price, to understand what the right price is to use that space. Because you don't know the financial operations of, and if you look at some of the prices of these watercraft, if it's costs almost $900 for 4 hours, it seems like $10,000 for a whole summer isn't that much, but we really don't know, you know, what the margin is or how many boats are rented per day, and if it's 2 hours versus 4 hours. So I think that that's something that we would need to be considered in some depth, if, you know, as you think about whether you want a concession down there or not, whether it's this one or a different one at some future date. And the pricing thing is tricky, I think.
It is, because a boat slip, for instance, for boat slip at Mile High Marina this year, I don't know what it is at May, but Mile High Marina this year is $57.50. A lakefront house that's basically a teardown is $4 million. So what's the whole dock worth? Is it worth $10,000? It seems to me that to have the whole dock for basically exclusive use for a commercial entity is a bit low. I mean, you get the whole dock for 10 grand. maybe I put in a proposal to get that whole dock for myself and I rent out space on it, tell my buddies for $5,000 a piece, and I walk away with 25 grand after the year. I mean, it's pretty low relative to what it costs, the price of entry. And the question I have is, what about people that can't afford these things? What about the person that comes up from Meridian with their little boat and they wanted to come and have a family vacation on the lake and go out and go see the islands and North Beach and all this business? They want to be able to go in and they need to park their boat somewhere when they launch it so they can put their stuff in it and go park their car and have a family outing, and they can't afford it. Their boat's worth $5,000. I mean, what about them too in the midst of it? So I guess there's just all these things that makes it difficult, notwithstanding issues of safety and all this. So I really feel like we just have to establish whether or not a commercial use is appropriate in such a location or any city park along the lake. And we need the public's opinion on it. And then if the public really feels like that is a valuable item and something that we should provide, and it really mitigates for things, people are going to use the boat ramp anyways, and therefore we're mitigating some of that use and less diesel trucks sitting there dumping boats in and out. But for right now, until we can really assess all of that, I feel like we need to.
And if I could add to, Forrest makes a great point. Mike, you make a very valid point too. And that was understood when we did the pros plan too. Like, it's on our agenda to revisit commercial use. Those commercial guidelines were adopted, before I started with the city 15 years ago, or right at the same time, I believe, with my predecessor. And so we're due to revisit that. And, there might be an opportunity there through public hearings to figure out what is the value of all that. But we're due for that, and that is coming.
So I think on that note, I think one thing to consider is that, local businesses, folks who live here, who are employed, employ other people who live here. I think there's a lot of value in local business and versus like the marina that's sold out to the Texans, right? I think, being able to have people who actually live here is really important, and to have people who live here, they need a job. So I think that's kind of an essential part. I'm really tired of seeing this place just turn into a retirement community. All my parents' friends, I love you, but it's like, it's, we need, there is a balance there. The lake is a big thing to consider, but I think it's important on the commercial discussion to consider local businesses as well. But I am also not in favor of just dumping more boats in the lake and having no control over what's happening in the lake. It's frustrating on so many levels when you have the $4 million tear down house that dumps a lot more pollution in the lake when they're building their new mansion that's going to be occupied a week a year. They fly up on their private jets and come up here and pollute everything.
But Coley, I just wanted to make a comment about, the local businesses, and maybe that's sort of when we have this more of a policy discussion on concessionaires, we wrap in this, what Kurt had mentioned is maybe improving certain dock space or something like that for that purpose, if that's how we want to support local businesses. But, I think right now, the space that we have is probably not adequate anyway. And so it's, and I think all of us have mentioned that we definitely don't want to take up speech space. That's just too valuable. I don't know if there's a price I would put on that, that would give someone that space. So, those are all things we can talk about in the context of more our policy on lakefront concessionaires. But I think, for this particular proposal, I think we've sort of got a consensus of what we want to do with it.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, just a couple of items. One is if you deny the application, this is the only one in front of you for the season. everybody else missed the deadline, correct?
Correct.
So this is, there aren't going to be others coming in front of you. Part of the reason for that deadline was so that discussion could be had well in advance of the season itself as opposed to last minute. And the second thing I would say is if you were to deny it, then you could see what happens at the ramp. Is there a lot of increased traffic? Is there a lot of, increased mud and whatever else going into the lake because of that traffic? So I don't think that the boats won't be in the lake, but I'm no expert. But it would give you an opportunity to contrast what it might be if there was a concession versus what you have if you don't have a concession list.
Bill, are you suggesting we might get some data on something?
I think that's good advice, and I think the council is leaning in that direction. So I'll call for a motion.
Okay, I move we deny the option submitted by Mountain Meadows Rentals to have a 1-year concession at Legacy Beach and use the public T-dock.
Second.
Okay, a motion has been made and seconded to deny the proposal as stated by Councilmember Nelson. May I have a roll call vote on this motion?
Councilmember Nelson,
Yes.
Councilmember Thrower,
Yes.
Mayor Giles,
Yes.
Councilmember Machezik,
Yes.
Councilmember Nielsen.
No, just because. Hopefully we recoup enough fees on or boat fees to be able to pay for monitoring equipment and people to run it.
Thank you, council. That motion carries.
I think we comment on just that.
Yeah, just a minute. Allow, Kurt, thanks. Put a lot of work into that. Council's interested in evaluating the bigger question like Mike stated. So hang in there with us and
Oh, no. Oh, thank you for your time.
we'll learn.
Thanks for your work.
Go ahead, Lyle.
No, I think that's how this turned out. The recognition that we need to get a lot of more information, more data, and that there's a lot coming about managing boat traffic on the lake, and particularly in these concession public areas. But I would make sure we don't recognize that we're supportive of the boating industry. We just got to find the right way that the boating industry can flourish. And if we don't find the right way, that's at jeopardy also. And we're putting the lake at jeopardy. And the lake's at jeopardy, the boating industry is really the one who pays the most for it. But I don't look at this move as being so counter to the boating industry. It is about how we get to the long-term aspect of the balance between boating, environmental, and the social aspects of the lake.
Thank you. All right, next up, we're going to hear from Public Works Director Nathan Stewart. And this is a request to authorize our city manager to sign contracts for undergrounding overhead franchise utilities on Mission Street. Nathan, welcome.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Okay. So I'm going to switch my background slightly. How about that one? Okay. So I'm happy to be here tonight to talk to you about an opportunity that has come up. As with all construction projects that we try to pull off, a lot happens very quickly as the spring thaw happens. So you're very familiar with the approval you had for your Mission Street Crabs project. And one of the elements to making that project happen was to have the overhead utilities relocate out of the way of some of our new stormwater swales. The road's widening. Those old poles that are on Mission Street are not at the back of the right-of-way. They're kind of 15 feet off of the right-of-way. And so they're right in the line of some of these new stormwater swales. So we've been working with all the utilities over the last year to get ready for this. And when Idaho Power unveiled their proposal, they were essentially recommending to relocate all of their poles from Idaho Street to Lake Street and replace many of them because they're old. And we just got that information in the last 2 to 3 weeks. And I took a pause and I said, well, Mission Street is one of our scenic routes, and one of our objectives for using franchise fees is to underground overhead utilities. And we've tried to prioritize that on scenic routes. So we quickly got everybody in the room and said, hey, look, is it going to cost an exorbitant amount of money more to relocate underground? And then even more, is it going to delay you significantly so that you're going to prevent our ability to get our project off the ground? And Idaho Power staff quickly did the numbers and came back and said, well, it's typically twice as expensive to relocate underground. But in this instance, it's probably more like about 75%. So we have a memorandum of understanding with Idaho Power that when we ask them to relocate within our rights of way, due to the needs of building facilities, which in this case is a road with bike lanes and stormwater swales, they have to pay 100% of that to relocate overhead. However, when we ask them to do that, we can also ask them for a cost estimate to go underground, and that the city would pay the difference if it costs more money. So that's essentially what you're seeing in this agenda bill tonight is an assessment of from what Idaho Power has identified, which the cost, I believe, is actually changed from $191,000 to $195,000. But that's the difference in cost for them to relocate all of their utilities underground from Idaho Street to Lake Street. And what that also does is that then requires the utilities that are on those poles to do so similarly. Now, those other utilities could have the opportunity to put their own poles up, but that's going to cost a bunch of money as well. So as it stands here, we feel that $300,000 is a good budget, and these decisions need to be made rather quickly. And so our recommendation would be to authorize the mayor in working with legal counsel to review the agreements. And tonight with Bill Punkeny working with me, we've been reviewing the Idaho Power Agreement in the background. So I'm happy to answer any questions that the council has.
So a real key question, Nathan. In our packet, it says authorize the city manager to sign documents because some of these decisions need to be made before council meetings to make it nimble and for you to stay on schedule. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thanks. Questions for Nathan? Okay. And the budget of 300,000, it's not only Idaho Power, but like underground fiber or other utilities, correct?
Yeah, there are at least 2 other utilities that are on those poles. Now, we do not have memorandums of understanding with those companies. So we will be negotiating hard with them so that they carry the full cost. If the cost to relocate underground is not any more expensive than if they were to set up their own poles and relocate on their own poles. Right now, they're on Idaho Power's poles, and they pay a rental fee, a shared use fee to Idaho Power. So we'll be very scrupulous in looking at their proposals to ensure that the cost for them to go underground is actually more expensive than for them to relocate with their own poles. So we may not see any additional costs for these utility companies, but in my experience working with this, Idaho Power's costs are 2 to 3 times more than the other utility companies. And I think a $300,000 budget can get us to the finish line adequately.
Thanks, Nathan. Any questions?
Is this all coming out of the franchise fee funds? This is nothing out of streets or?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, and I checked with Randy earlier today, and we currently have about $1.1 million in that franchise fee fund that was not necessarily allocated to this project, but it's available to be used.
Good. Good question. All right, I'll call for a motion.
Move we authorize the city manager to sign agreements associated with overhead utility relocation work for the 2025 Mission Street Crabs project, provided such agreements, etc., are reviewed and approved by legal counsel and within a total budget of up to $300,000.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. I have a roll call vote on this motion.
Yes.
Mayor Giles,
Yes.
Councilmember Machesik,
Yes.
Councilmember Nielsen.
Yes.
Thank you, council. That motion carries. Thank you, Nathan, for joining us and good work on that, keeping it on track.
Thanks. We'll keep you updated in our department report.
Okay, next up. Yes, welcome, Randy. You're gonna discuss our budget schedule and talk about some key dates.
Correct.
Thank you.
And I'm trying not to think that the clearing out of the room was because I put a budget item, but it's not very good. Randy Curious, I'm the new finance director and city treasurer, wrapping up my second week. So this is the official kickoff for the new budget year, FY26. State code requires that all taxing districts by the end of April submit our public hearing date, location, time to the county clerk. And so because it's so important that public hearing, that at least 4 of you are in attendance, I wanted to get this in front of you. On the agenda, it says that this is an action item, but it's not. So what I'm hoping is that prior to the next council meeting deadline, that if you could reach out to me and let me know if any of these dates don't work for you, and then I'll do what I can to try to make adjustments. So this is just getting it in front of you. Hopefully it works with your calendars. What I did is I just started with the last date, which is the August 14th, and just worked backwards from there just to fit everything in. So this is just information at this time. Anybody has any questions? It's going to be fun.
It always is.
Yeah.
It will be fun.
Okay.
Yeah, there'll be some frustration along the way, but
It's
accounting humor.
Yeah, and Randy, thanks so much for the work that you've done so far. I really commend you for jumping in and rolling up your sleeves.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And staying through a whole city council meeting for that much.
Yeah, I know. Save the best for last.
Yeah.
But also get to see what you got into.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
so yeah, there's the little flow chart or the table budget calendar is really helpful.
Okay.
And we'll make sure that we have 4 people at those key meetings so that we can conduct business, and especially at those public hearings that you talked about in August and
Great.
some other key meetings. Thanks a lot.
Great. Thank you.
So at the next meeting, we'll have it as an action item for you guys to approve that calendar.
Yep, I saw that. Yeah, that was good. Get that locked in and then.
And just for clarification, the meeting that it's essential they have 4 at is August 14th, right? Yeah,
that's correct.
Yeah, yeah. And then we did build in a couple weeks of cushion in case you know there are things that come up at that meeting that need to be discussed further.
Really, the following week, the 28th, is really the hard deadline. So you could continue it if you like. Hopefully not, but we have that little bit of buffer there.
We'll try to avoid drama whenever possible. All right. Well, thank you, Randy. Okay. Next up, we're going to talk about upcoming meeting schedule.
We pulled the Tesla question off of the.
Oh yeah, Tesla.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Thanks. The Tesla stuff on the consent agenda. Who's going to present that? Michelle's on. Michelle, can you talk to us a little bit about the Tesla charging station and the changes, and so that we can take action on that? That was
sure. I'd be happy to. Michelle Grunewald, Community and Economic Development Director. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes, we can. Thank you for
Okay.
joining us.
Great. So basically, this is an amendment to an existing agreement that we have with Tesla to install superchargers at the First Street parking lot. Since I last came to you, which was in January of 2025, I guess, or yeah, 2024. A number of things came up that we did not know about. One of them being basically the high cost of providing power to that parking lot for this intense usage. And after I think Tesla got into the specific of the design, we learned that originally the agreement is for 8 chargers, that was going to be over $800,000 worth of utility upgrades to Idaho Power. And that's really just to upgrade that power grid in that location, assuming that you have 8 cars charging at the same time. So it's quite a bit of load for that location. We also learned that if they were to cut their project in half, it was just over $100,000. And so they basically said initially they were not interested in cutting the project in half because of the way that those chargers come in sort of 8 packs, so to speak. But after working with them, they basically indicated to us that they were going to pull out of the project. And then we started having more conversations. We had a number of meetings with Idaho Power, with Tesla, with city staff and our interim city manager on trying to figure out how do we make this project happen, because it meets the goals of some of our sustainability goals. And we really put a lot of time and effort into this project. And so ultimately, we agreed upon using franchise fees to help upgrade the infrastructure in that location so that we could make superchargers possible within our community in that location. And then we worked with Tesla on changing the number of chargers from 8 to 4, and then that then changed the lease payment. So it's over $10,000 a year that the city will receive. Quite honestly, we felt like when they first came to us and suggested 8 chargers, we thought it was kind of a lot for the size of our community and where we're at. So we feel like actually 4 might be a better number at this juncture. And then obviously if additional chargers were to be added, there would have to be an upgrade to that power grid again. But ultimately, it was always envisioned that we'd have chargers here. There's a real benefit in having superchargers because of the time it takes to charge. It's much quicker than the other chargers that are available. So that way we get turnover in these spaces and we don't have people kind of parking there all day. So basically this amendment reflects the reduction in the number of chargers from 8 to 4. It outlines the commitment towards upgrading the infrastructure and power in that location, and then the associated lease change with a reduced number of parking spaces that the city would be leasing out.
Thanks for that quick overview. And you said franchise fees are set aside to cover our portion.
Correct.
For the power upgrade. Okay.
Yeah, so we worked with Phil Kushlin on identifying a funding source in order to provide that upgrade so we could see a project like this happen in this location.
Thank you, Michelle. Questions from council?
Yeah, my reasoning for pulling it and wanting to discuss it is that we had a deal, and then Tesla said the deal's not going to work based upon their due diligence, and I know the city staff has done a lot of work to try to. It's not for lack of effort, I'm sure, on our city staff's part, but it just struck me as, do we need to have a conversation if we have a deal that we signed or that you signed and on the council's behalf, and then then it's change. So understanding what the scope of the change is, and does anybody have any concerns about that, or do in such a way that doesn't mean I understand what Michelle's saying, but I guess begs the question is, are we in a rush? Is there another provider that would provide like what we originally had looked at? Or is this just, based upon what Michelle's saying, is it something that we need to look at? And so I just wanted to have the conversation.
Michelle,
anybody else had any thoughts on it?
Did you hear the question? Is there another provider that makes superchargers for all different models that's approached us, that wants to work with us? I'm assuming.
No, I'm not familiar with another vendor who does superchargers.
So yeah,
I do think that there's a benefit in our community having these superchargers, just so people are able to get a quick charge. We have another charging station in town, and ultimately we're going to need, more. But I think at this juncture, it's nice for us to have both the superchargers and the level 2s within the community.
Are the ones at May Hardware, are they level 2s?
Correct.
With that, you're good to go?
That was the question for me. It just seemed like, you have a contract in place, and then somebody comes back and says, well, here, I want to do something else, and it didn't look in our favor, and I wanted to make sure that we're all.
Yeah, me too. Were we anticipating, I see, we've already spent roughly $70,000 in infrastructure with Idaho Power, and that to get to this point. Is that's money we've already spent, and was that money we initially encountered to spend with Tesla?
Yeah, that is money that we spent in order to upgrade the utility to make a project like this happen, regardless of the vendor. And we felt like it was important because we had done a lot of planning around it. And, there's always a benefit in trying to get that underground power in the ground when, rather than ripping up sidewalks and that sort of thing in the future. So those were dollars that the city expended. Idaho Power actually just invoiced us for that. So I'm not sure that it's actually technically been paid yet. But those were dollars that we committed to either having Tesla pay or that the city would pay so that we could see this type of activity in this parking lot.
Are we going to have any more expenses?
Did you hear Colby's question?
No, this is it. Ultimately, we're not paying for the chargers. Our commitment is basically we're leasing the spaces and getting a lease payment for that. We made a commitment to upgrading basically old infrastructure so that we're ready for this technology within our community. And then really everything else is that, and I guess the other piece is we are providing snow removal of those parking spaces, which we do anyways within our public parking lots. So those are the only expenses we'll have. Everything else, the infrastructure itself is an investment by Tesla. And so we don't have any further expenses. And we had quite a bit of discussion even before Tesla came to us about, how are we going to provide this service within the community and who best could manage this. The city's not really set up to be an electric charging provider at this point. And so ultimately when this opportunity came up, we said it aligned with the goals in terms of providing EV charging within our public parking lots. We've been trying to work with them to make this a reality.
Seems reasonable. Council, would you feel comfortable making a motion to approve this?
I'm not quite yet.
Okay.
And I think we've made the right decision. and to where we are, and we spent money, we gotta go forth this, and then I look and go, is there another provider? And is there another opportunity now that we've already spent $70,000 and Tesla, has been no reflection on the company at all. At the time they were the sole provider. And so I was just wondering now, and if I know Tesla is universal and seemingly state of the art, but these arts are changing so quickly. I'm just be curious if, since we've already spent $70,000, if there is another better deal with another provider.
So technically, we haven't spent $70,000. We've just been provided the invoice from Idaho Power, but I don't think it's very unlikely that we would find another vendor who would pay to upgrade this infrastructure. So really, that's kind of a commitment, I think, by the city to ensure that we have EV charging within our community in a public parking lot. And just to clarify, May Hardware's charger is I said level 2, but it's actually a level 3.
Yeah, in my conversation with Rick about that, they are just slightly slower than what the Tesla charging times would be. I'm not necessarily advocating for change. I would just like to know, if our arrangement, the time there was a sole provider, it's the only way we had to go. And it may still be that. I would just be curious for the amount of money they're willing to pay us. If there's other providers now in the market that would say, for what you've done, we're going to pay you $1,000 a month or $2,000 a month or whatever.
So that'll be a lot of work for our staff to go back, and they may come up empty-handed.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're pretty confident that this is the provider who's going to provide this service at this point. If we decided, well, I don't know. Nathan's on. Morgan is actually the project manager for the First Street parking lot, so he might have additional information just to add.
Yeah, I could make a few comments. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So one thing to keep in mind is that, we started out with the expectation this was going to be 8. And, 8 for a provider, that's twice as amount of revenue that they could get if they're being used. But when everybody discovered that required $800,000 of infrastructure just to Idaho Power before you even pay to put these chargers in, that's a real indication that it's going to be very hard to find another provider. So, fortunately, we were able to work with them and they were willing to consider going to 4. That's not their typical business model, but they have a strong interest in being able to provide a charging space in central Idaho. So I think to get it across the finish line, they needed some financial support from the city to make that happen. Now, the question, could you find another vendor? Well, maybe we could. How many years would that take? And would we have the confidence that vendor would provide better service than what Tesla can provide? Tesla prides themselves on having those stations functioning and working. There's been a lot of anecdotal information about other companies not being up running and having problems with their system. So I think there's a lot of confidence with that Tesla product, but at the same time, they're planning to put these in this year. So that revenue starts coming back to the city this year, and you essentially, have that opportunity to find another vendor 10 years from now if you want, because this lease is only for 10 years.
And I believe we're looking at the campus facility with a transit company for more charging stations in the future. So maybe that's when we could go out for proposals with other companies. Is that correct?
We could. We certainly could. And, we could decide in 10 years that we don't want 8. We only want to keep 4 there, or we really need 8. And maybe at that point, there's been other development that's come into McCall, infill development that's upgraded that backbone infrastructure. But, the $800,000 is a lot of
backbone infrastructure to put in, additional charging stations. So I think that's going to continue to be a barrier no matter where we look throughout the community. And this is kind of the culmination of all the efforts that have been done today. And I think if we move forward with this agreement, you're going to see those chargers installed immediately versus an uncertainty on when we'd get them in there in the future otherwise.
Yeah, and I will just add that in working with Tesla on this specifically, that it's pretty unusual to see those sort of costs, but because we are a small community in rural Idaho, as opposed to, I think, a lot of the other areas along the coast and some of the other places that are more urban with this infrastructure, they just don't hit those types of infrastructure costs. So really, like our infrastructure and Idaho Power, we met with them and talked with them, and ultimately their position is that, the development sort of pay for those upgrades. And so as Nathan mentioned, when you have such a high barrier in terms of your utility costs, like we wouldn't see other providers coming in and providing charging, because it probably just doesn't make financial sense.
Any more questions for staff? Okay.
I'm satisfied. Like I said, I just saw a change that I wanted to address and have the conversation.
Absolutely. No, those are all great questions. I'll call for a motion to approve the amendment then to the license agreement.
Move we approve the amendment to the license agreement and commercial lease between the City of McCall and Tesla for the charging station in the First Street parking lot, and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents.
Thank you, council. Motion has been made and seconded to approve the amendment. May I have a roll call vote on this motion?
Council.
Yes.
Councilmember Nielsen.
Yes.
Mayor Giles.
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson.
Yeah.
Councilmember Machese.
Yes.
Thank you, council. And Mike, thanks for reminding me that we had that business unfinished. I was trying to jump ahead. We'll go to our schedule future meetings. Bessie Jo, can you help us with that?
Just a reminder that next week for your special meeting will be a work session with staff on the area of impact. Another reminder about the April 22nd annual volunteer event. I sure hope we get to see you all there. And then our April 24th meeting looks like it's going to have quite a few items on it. And then April 25th is your climate action work session with the consultants, and that'll be all of your 2 hours. And then your May 5th area of impact with the county. So, and as you saw on your budget calendar, it looks like that your first budget work session will be May 23rd. I do have that scheduled from 9 to 1 in the Hirschberger room. And so it'll be your first one. It'll be priority setting. And it'll be your first one working with Randy. So, and Forrest. So I thought you probably need more than just 2 hours until 1.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Nope, that's all right. Go ahead.
Just based on today, it seems like there are a couple things we might want to add. One is discussion of moratorium on lot splitting. Is that something that we
sounds like
we want to
council's
add?
interested in that?
Yeah. Mayor and Forrest, I think this is where you go back to Michelle and say, where is that on the priorities? You really need that first from staff in terms of a first touch. How big of an issue is it in terms of how it affects density and the interplay with the sewer district and those kinds of things, so that you know if it's something to come up or not. And when would be the best time to address it?
Would it be beneficial for us to bring that as an agenda item for discussion first, without any action, just sort of an informational piece? I don't know how the council wants to handle that.
Yeah, I think that's what you're suggesting, Bill, right? Is, I mean, we get information first, Steve, and see if there's reason to.
So as I understand the issue is that somebody goes in and they say, because of the lot coverage requirements, I want to build a bigger house and this is where I want to build it. So I want to combine a lot. I know they dealt with this issue in Blaine County some time back, and I'm not sure how they addressed it. But there were your sewer plans, your different infrastructure plans, road and everything else is based on a certain density within neighborhoods. And so if everybody buys 2 lots and say, I now want to combine it and build a bigger house, it throws all your infrastructure stuff off. But how many of those lot combinations actually happen? And is it a trend that's, we're just on the leading edge of it, so you need to get ahead of it? Or are there covenants in most of those subdivisions are prohibited? Because sometimes you have that. So I'm not sure how big the issue is, and maybe you need to get a handle on how big the issue is before you launch into a moratorium to prohibit it and adjusting your code.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good idea. Ultimately, on May 5th, we have the discussion with the county on the impact area, because this would also affect impact area codes potentially. And then I think maybe what we can do is look ahead at the council meeting schedule. There's a number of kind of smaller code amendments that we plan on moving forward. And so we can decide what the right timing is to give you some really good background on this particular issue. And then and we can kind of see how it fits in with kind of some of those other items that we're working on.
I think the other thing, Mayor and Council, is if somebody was going to combine a lot and start building a house, they probably needed to have it done like this one that was in front of you tonight now, in order to be able to do all the things they need to do to be able to start construction this year. So I don't know, you might look, Michelle, and see what time of year you get those requests to combine lots. And
yeah,
maybe the window's already closed for this year, so to speak, to where you have time to proceed to, if you need to adjust your codes.
I think if anything, we can put together some background on how many lots this impacts and what the actual numbers are in terms of the numbers of applications that we're seeing per year. And that could inform the council on next steps. So I think we can do that. We'll look at the calendar and see when that works out with their schedule.
I think that'd be really helpful.
Good catch.
The only other thing I wanted to remind everybody is the AIC conference is June 18th through the 20th. And if any of you plan to go, please let me know if the window to get you registered is open.
Okay, any questions for Bessie Jo? All right, I'll call for a motion to adjourn.
To adjourn.
Second. All in favor of adjourning tonight's council meeting, please say aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.